Hi everyone, welcome back to GameMaker. It's Mickey, and in this video tutorial I want to take a look at surfaces and how we can use it to create this reflection effect that we see here. So you can see this is the finished product that we'll end up with, and I'm controlling the character with my mouse. So that's kind of what we're going to look at, where we have a target or a capture area, and then we have an actual reflection area, which my character goes underneath here. So let's roll the intro and let's start off on a fresh project. So we have a fresh project here, and you can see that I have my sprites here on the right, and I have my player. And like I said, my player is actually just 100% controlled by the mouse. And we have a capture target, which is an empty object. I've just assigned the blue image here, and then we have a red image for the reflection target. If I go into my room, you can see that I actually have absolutely nothing. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in my player, and I'm going to put him in there, and I'm going to scale him up, let's say by 4 by 4, just to make it so we can see him a little bit better. That might actually be too big. Let's choose 3 by 3. Now, what I want to do is I want to actually get right into how this is going to work. So we have a capture target here, and I can drag this into my scene, and this is just a regular object. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to say, I want to capture anything that falls within here. So that means if my player is walking along and he falls within this capture target, I want to make it so whatever I choose as the reflection target, whether it's one or it's multiple, they're going to take the same size as this capture target and they're going to render it out. So if I had a reflection target up here and a reflection target down here, if my character is walking on this capture target, he's going to be duplicated in these two spots. So that's actually the system that we're going to build out right here. So in order to do that, we need to switch back to our workspace, and we're going to edit our capture target and reflection target here. What I want to do is I want to add a variable definition to our capture target, and we're going to be using a string here because we need a way to tell what actual target we want to capture or we want to reflect into. So we will use a string, and we're going to use the name of default capture. Actually, sorry, that will be the default. The name we're just going to make name. The next thing we want to do is go down to the reflection target, and in that reflection target, we also want to bring up the variable definitions. Once again, we're going to add a string, and for the default, we will just use default capture, and the variable name, we will use capture name. So in the end, what this is going to refer to is whenever we're working with the reflection target, we need to set it to the name that we're going to be putting it in to the capture here. So for instance, if I go back to my room 0 and I double click on this capture target and I click variables, you can see that I can edit this variable here. So let's give this variable here a name. So let's edit, and let's just say capture A. So if I copy this and I go to the reflection target above, then I go to variables, I can then again set the default capture, the capture name, to capture A. So this is just linking this capture target up with this reflect target. I'm going to do the same for the bottom, just so we can show that we can reflect more than one surface. Now that that's set up, we can actually close our room because we shouldn't need to go back into our room, but we're going to be working with the reflect object here. So I'm going to go and close everything but this guy. So we'll close all but him. Now we're going to create a couple different events. We'll have a create event. We're going to have an alarm 0, and I'll explain these all in just a moment. We need a draw event, and then finally we'll go down to other and we'll add an event 0. Now in the create event, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a couple different variables that will help us as we're coding. So in here, I want to set up a variable to tell us what instance we're going to be capturing the surface from. So I'll say instance capture, and we're going to set that to no one for now because we don't actually know what the surface is that we're going to be using. We're going to have to grab that in a minute. Next, I want to, actually, let me load up the room. Because we have resized this, I need to resize the reflection target to meet that resize. So of course I could just drag it out like that, but what I want to have happen is no matter what the size is, it's automatically going to scale to that. So let's create two variables to hold on to that. So I'll say the capture width, and I'll just set it to 0, and the capture height will also be 0. And we will get these in 1 second. We need two more things. We need a surface, and let's use a surface mirror. And we want to set this to -1. So this is going to be the surface that we're working with. And like I said, we have these targets here in our variable definitions, and we need a way to hook them up. Now, just because of the way events and everything run, I'm going to set an alarm. So I'll use alarm set 0, and you can see that I added it in here. Let me close my room here, give me more space. I've added alarm 0 in there, and I'm just going to say after room second times 1. So after 1 second, run the code within the alarm 0. So in alarm 0, we can either write all the code that we need in here to find all the instances, or we could use event 0. I'm going to be using event 0 just in case I have to call this alarm again. So I'm just going to say event underscore user. I'm going to pass in the number 0 to make sure that we call the event user 0. So if we go to the event user 0, what we have to do is we have to loop through all of our capture targets, and then we have to basically search the name of those instances to see if it fits the name that we're looking for. So if we go back 1 second and we go to the room, so we need to go in the reflection variables and say, okay, give me all the capture targets and then match them up with this capture A value. If we don't find any, then obviously we can't reflect something. So if we had this variable name as something different, such as capture B, obviously we wouldn't find it, so we wouldn't be able to actually reflect any of our surface. So I'm going to make sure that that's surface A. And now let's go and write this code here. So we could use a for statement. So we could say for var index equals 0. So starting at 0, we want to loop until the instance number of our object capture target. So we're going to loop through however many capture targets are within our room, and then we'll just add 1 to the index. So while we're looping, we're going to grab the instance. So I'll just make a variable called inst, and we will use instance find, and the object that we're looking for is our capture object, and the index that we're looking for is going to be the index within our for statement. So what we're saying is, give me the first one in the list, the second, third, etc., etc. Hey everyone, thanks for making it this far in the video. You can grab this game for free. Just look at the key in the bottom, the next couple seconds. Anyway, first come, first serve. Thanks.
Serial killer and left for dead.
So we could say if the instance name that we're talking about equals capture name, then we know we have a match. And now the reason that we have access to this instance name is because we're finding the object capture. So if we go to object capture, you'll remember that we set a variable definition, a variable name there. And we are checking it against the capture name, which is our variable definition within the reflection target. Now, if we have a match, I'll say the instance capture, which is a variable that we created in our create event, is going to be equal to the instance. So this is just hooking it up. So if we ever refer to it again, we have an easy way to access this. So we're just putting it in that variable there. The next thing we want to do is the capture width and height. So like I said, we could drag them out, but we want it to happen automatically. So we'll say the capture width is going to be the instance underscore capture, or we could actually just say inst.bbox left minus the instance bbox right. So this would give us a width, and because we don't want to deal with negative numbers, we could say give us the absolute value of whatever this is going to be. So if our math is wrong and it turns out it's minus 64, it will automatically flip it to say 64 pixels. So we can just say the capture height now is going to be equal to the absolute value of the instance.bbox, and we will say bottom minus instance bbox top. So now that we have the width and height, The only real thing that we want to do is to show, we'll have a debug method here. So for debugging, we will set the image alpha to something like 0.2. So now let's see here. We have our create event. We're not doing anything with our surface, but let's run it and see what actually happens. So you can see that automatically this got the alpha faded out a little bit. So we know that that code is running, and we don't have anything in our reflection right now, but we will change that in 1 second here. I guess I should point out the reason we don't have anything in the reflection is because we have a draw event here. Whenever we have a draw event, we don't have draw self, it will just blank it out completely. So what I'll say is if our instance capture not equal no one, this will be the bulk of our code. But if it does equal no one, so it will equal no one for about a second, then we'll just draw ourselves. So if we run the game again, we should have it pop up. Then once it finds that target, you can see that it's not drawing itself, and the target is now faded out a little bit. So the next thing I want to do in the draw event is I want to create a surface. So right now we're working with one surface, and that's the application surface, and I want to duplicate whatever I find within the square to a different area of the game without recreating objects, recreating tiles and everything like that. So we can do that by using a surface. So the first thing we have to do is we have to check to see if a surface exists. So we'll say if the surface exists, and we called ours surface mirror. So if it equals false, then what we want to do is create the surface. So we'll say surface underscore mirror equals surface underscore create, and now we pass it a width and height. Now remember, not too long ago we got the exact width and height that we are using for the capture rectangle, so we could just say the capture width and then the capture height. So that will solve all of our width and height issues for us. So now, once we have a surface, what we want to do is copy part of the surface from the main application surface. So if we open up our room, this entire room is the application surface. And what I want to do is I want to copy everything from this area all the way down to the end of the square. And if I do that, I should be able to draw this particular part of this area into our reflection targets here. So luckily enough, we have a function called surface copy part, which is basically saying I want to copy part of the surface. So we're going to put in our destination, which is our mirror. And where do we want to start copying? Surfaces work from 0 to 1. So we want to start copying at the upper left. So we want to say copy at the 0 and 0 location. And we want to use the application surface. And now, where do we want to copy on the source? So where we want to copy on the source is if we take a look at our room, the instance that we're going to capture, we need to use the XY positions here because we want to capture this location within our room. So we'll say our instance capture.x and instance capture.y. So once we have that, the next thing that we need is the width and the height. And of course, we have this right up here, which is the capture width and height. So we can paste that in and close that off. And now we've already copied the main portion of our code. So we have a surface, we've created the surface, and now we're copying part of the application surface onto our surface mirror. So the next thing we need to do is actually draw that surface. So we have draw self here, but what we're going to do in this if statement is we're going to say draw surface, and we're going to pass it what surface we want to draw, and then the X and Y location that we want to draw at. Now this X and Y location is our reflection target location. So if I hit F5, and if everything is working, we may have to move this guy, but you can see that now we are drawing this guy right here. Whenever he goes within this surface, it automatically picks this up. So that means that no matter what, even if I come into my room, and let's add, I think I may have to do it above, but even if I add an asset, and I'll put that guy there and there. Let's see if this works. I may have to drag the layers around. Let me drag that layer down. underneath the instances. And if I hit F5, they should come through because this becomes a little bit more alpha. So you can see that we have I'm using the guy as my mouse cursor, but you can see that we have the characters walking there and they are just simple sprites. So normally what you would end up doing is you would either set this to a full image alpha of 0. So you could do this right here. Or the other thing you could do is you could just say, let's take this out and say the instance is not visible. So we'll say visible equals false. So once again, if I run that, everything will go black and you can see that we have this here. Okay, so in the preview, I'll take this out for now. In the preview, we had something that kind of looked like a reflection and it was walking on water. So that's what we want to do here. So I'm going to duplicate this room and I'm just going to move it up and I'll take off one of my targets and I don't need my assets. Actually, I should keep the assets. So I'm going to put my reflection target right here. So this is our setup. This is what I have. I have my player, I have my capture and my reflection, and I'm going to put in an asset layer and I'll have this line, which I should be able to. Did I make the wrong thing? No, I made the right one. I'm going to put this line in here and I'll just drag it across. Now, if I run this game, as long as my room's set up correctly, you can see that we're still duplicating the surface, but we're not doing it the right way. What we need to do is draw the surface a different way instead of the normal draw surface here. So we'll comment this out and we want to use draw surface. We want the extended version. So the extended version will let us mirror or rotate this specific surface. So we're going to pass in the surface mirror. Then we're going to pass in the X and Y location. So actually, let's just make it kind of what we had. So X scale, Y scale, the rotation, the color, which is C white, and then the alpha, which is 1. So if I run this, we should have exactly what we had before, and you can see that's working. Now, if I want to rotate this, let's say I rotate the Y scale. So I set the Y scale to -1. You'll see that all of a sudden, it's not really working. The reason that it's not working is because if we take a look at the anchor point, we're anchoring everything to the top left. And because we're dealing with a surface, we're not dealing with anything like shaders. What that particular code is doing, if I can find it here, is we're just taking the anchor point and flipping it up. So that means that we have to add that space back on. So if we add the capture height, that will move it back down into position. So we should see it stay in place now. And you can see that we have that nice little effect that we had at the start there as my guy is bobbling up and down. So really the only thing that we need to do to get this to work is we need to go to the event 0 and just basically say that we can no longer see that instance. It made me just zoom in and I would make the grid size a little bit smaller and put this. Let's see if I can make this 2 by 2. That's extremely small. I can get this to go down just 1. Okay, let's put our grid back because that's super small. And if I hit F5, let's see how this looks. We should see, there we go. So that works pretty good. So you can see that if we were to make an effect here, you can have them walking in water. Now, the nice part about this system is I'm able to take these instances, and as long as my player is set up underneath the capture area, so if I have him above, it's not going to work. Sorry, if I have him below the reflection target, it shouldn't work. And you can see that it doesn't. So as long as all my reflection targets are below my player, or even you could create a new layer and you could put it there, but I could duplicate this target, copy and paste it up here. And as long as they're all named the same, so we're all looking for the capture name of capture A, what's going to happen is all of those are going to automatically work for us. And you can see that it kind of creates that neat effect. But yeah, it's pretty easy to do. Surfaces are pretty nice. Really, the only thing you would really want to do is in the cleanup event, which is this guy, cleanup, you could say if surface surface exists, if we're looking for our surface mirror. So if our surface exists, then all we want to do is say surface destroy or delete. I think it is surface free. Sorry, we want to free up the surface because we don't want to take up any memory. If we don't free it up, we could cause a memory leak. The other thing to be aware of when we're working with surfaces is we need this little piece of code in here, because if I run my game and we have our surface here, we're doing stuff, but then all of a sudden I go back. If I load up my game again, the surface was deleted and it needed to be recreated again. So without that if statement, we could run into some issues. But anyway, there you go. It's a nice effect. You should be able to get some nice reflections in there. And don't forget to play around with the X and Y scale here. You could easily rotate the surface as much as you want it. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'm sorry I rambled on for the last little bit, but thank you again. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you have cool ideas.